Hey guys, before we start the next writing project, I want to show you a mapping technique. We're going to be using it a few times over this semester, so I'd like you to get familiar with it. So this video is going to be introducing the technique, and then there will be an assignment at the end. So make sure you watch to the end of the video so that you know and understand what the assignment actually is. Before I show you the technique, however, I want to show you these pictures. So this first picture is a picture of a coral. They're found in the ocean, right? This is a living coral. Another picture of another kind of coral, but this one's dried out. As you're looking at these pictures, see if you can see what they have in common. That's kind of the point of this. Saguaro cactus. This is a slime mold, a fungus. Again, notice the structure. Notice how this thing's put together. Lightning. Are you seeing that structure? And an aerial photo of the Amazon. Same structure. The root system of a tree and also the branching system of a tree. It's pretty much the same on the bottom as the top. Isn't that weird? Do you see that structure? The veins in a leaf. Your circulatory system. This is interesting because, again, it's that same structure. You've got the heart in the middle, and then that turns into the arteries. And then those arteries become smaller and smaller and smaller blood vessels until they get to the very tiniest ones, which are called capillaries. It's the same structure, though. Starting at a base at the center, and then branching off, and then those branches branch off, and those branches branch off, and you can get finer and finer and finer. That's actually a neuron. It's a brain cell. Here's an interesting thing about those little branches which show that structure again. Those are called dendrites. You can actually grow dendrites. Whenever you challenge your brain, do something different or unordinary or new, if you teach yourself something new, you're actually growing those dendrites. Those are the connections between the brain cells. That's how your brain cells communicate with each other, and that's how you think. So the reason I wanted to show you this structure is because it has to do with a technique of organizing your thoughts. And this is what it looks like. This is a mind map. And it's called mind mapping because the thought is it recreates the structure of your mind. So if you think back to that picture of that neuron, if your brain is hardwired to this pattern, maybe your thoughts are too. You know, we used to think of thinking in a very linear way. For example, the traditional way of mapping out the essay that you're going to write, it used to look something like this. For example, here's an example of a formal outline, and this probably looks pretty familiar to you because a lot of teachers, especially in high school, pretty much demand that you create one of these and turn it in before you actually write your essay. Well, it's because they're trying to teach you to organize your thoughts. Rather than just sit down and just start writing something, you write something better if you organize the thoughts first. If you put some thinking into it before you actually commit it to paper, basically. And that's what an outline makes you do. And this is a formal outline. The Roman numerals, the capital letters, the smaller numbers. That's an outline, basically. But can you see how it's a very linear way of thinking? It starts at the top and works its way to the bottom, right? That's really what's going on here, is it's just working its way to the bottom of the essay, of the piece of writing. That's one way of thinking of it, and this works for some people. You know what, honestly, it didn't work that well for me. When I was a writing student, I really hated creating these things. For whatever reason, my brain just didn't think this way. And so, that's why I'm introducing this method here, okay? It's basically doing the same thing, but it's presenting it in a different way. It's the same information, but again, it's presenting it in a different way. So this is a mind map. You can see it looks very different than that outline that I showed you. There are rules to mind mapping. For example, you can use color. In fact, it's encouraged because color helps you organize your thoughts. It also helps you dissect things. When you're taking something complicated or difficult to understand and put it into different parts and label those parts with color, it can really help you to understand how those parts actually fit together. So that's what's going on here basically. The colors in this case are being used to show you the different categories, right? The main idea in the middle is using mind maps and what you can do with them. And then the arteries, those major branches coming out from the center, each one's got a different color because it's showing a different category of how to use a mind map. Then it branches off. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the smaller you get, basically, the more detailed you're getting. So what this is really doing is taking a major idea and breaking it down and breaking that down and breaking those down. So color, very important. Also notice the use of pictures. Pictures can be used in this. You would never see pictures in a formal outline. Most teachers wouldn't accept that. But in this, again, it's actually encouraged because you know that saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words? It's really true. A picture, a simple picture, just an icon, can represent so much information, and it can help you recall so much information without all the writing. The point of a mind map is it's supposed to be very visual, okay? You have all this information all at once, and it's given it to you in a very, I guess you could say, simplified or limited way. But it's not limiting the amount of information. You still have all this information. Notice how it's written, right? You don't see any sentences on this thing. You don't need them. The point of this map is to help you recall information or to help you get information recorded so you can recall it later. You don't need to write whole sentences in order to remember an idea. Sometimes just a word will suffice, and that's what you're aiming for with this type of map. No sentences. If you have an idea that's going to go on this map and you can only write it with a sentence, well, then that means you need to break it down into smaller parts. It means you need to use a couple of words to give the overall idea and then break it up into smaller ideas. And again, using one or two words for each of the separate elements, but not sentences. You want to be able to see this information readily and easily and immediately. And that's what fewer words is actually doing here. So you've got colors, you've got pictures, and you've got the use of very few words. Notice how this thing is constructed. It starts in the middle and then emanates outward from that center, right? Very different from a formal outline, which starts at the top and goes to the bottom. Again, the idea here is that this is how humans actually think. They don't necessarily think in a linear fashion because they've got all these brain cells firing off at different moments, and they've got all these ideas reinforcing each other whenever you're learning something or remembering something. Those different ideas, that cluster, that web of ideas are all reinforcing each other basically and supporting each other. And that really is more like a web, I would say, than like a line. Now, this mind mapping technique that I just showed you is going to tie in very closely with the next project, the next writing project that we're going to start. And it's going to start with a central idea. The central idea is going to be the main idea. That's usually how these outlines work. So whatever main idea is, whatever the main idea that you're going to be writing about or arguing for or trying to convince your reader of or trying to prove, it's going to start with a central idea. And that central idea is going to start in the center of your paper. For this writing assignment, we're going to write a descriptive paragraph, okay? Paragraph structure we've been talking about already. Everything we've learned about paragraph structure is going to hold true for this assignment. Nothing's changing, really. The structure, the overall map, blueprint of this thing is almost exactly the same as the last paragraph that you just wrote. So, because this is a descriptive paragraph, you need something to describe. So, here is the main idea of this paper, okay? I want you to think of what your favorite food is, basically. You're going to convince your reader, you're going to try to convince me that this is the best food in the world. So I want you to think of what your favorite food is and then put that right in the center of a piece of paper, okay? And you are going to turn this in. This is going to be turned in with the final product. So make sure you do this step. Don't skip this. Get out a piece of paper. If you want, you can do this on a computer or digitally, totally up to you. I like working on paper for things like this, though. So your main idea, your favorite food, goes right in the middle. put some kind of shape around it, okay? You want to separate it from the rest of the elements that are going to go into this outline, into this map. So I put a heart around mine because I like that motif of the circulatory system. You can use a box, you can use a bubble, you can use a cloud. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to. But you might want to make it significant to your the main idea of what your paper is going to be. Totally up to you. So I've got my heart filled with my favorite food, sashimi, right? Now, we're going to have a second level of information. Because remember, just like when we talked about the apple plant job, and when we talked about what kind of writer you are, that paragraph, same structure each time, right? You had that second level of information, which become the supporting details. We're going to need supporting details for this paragraph. In this case, we're going to use our senses, because a great way to describe food is using your senses. If you want somebody to understand what it's like to experience this type of food, you want to use your senses so that they can rely on their senses to imagine what this experience is like, right? So, because you have 5 senses, you're going to have 5 categories, right? 5 supporting details. Those will be the arteries. There you go. There are my 5 subtopics, my 5 categories, my 5 supporting details. Now, I'm going to name each one, because that's an important step, because that is going to become a sentence. It's a supporting detail. My blue sentence here is going to be a complete sentence when I write this actual paper. So I need to label it so that I understand what that sentence is going to be about. So label it with the 5 senses. There you go, right? You can use your eyes, you can use your ears, you can use your nose, you can use your mouth, and you can use your fingers to feel this thing. We're going to use all 5 of those senses to force you to really describe the heck out of this thing, basically, so that somebody can really understand what it's like to experience this food. All right, next level, the 3rd level. Remember, that 3rd level is your evidence, your explanation, your examples, right? Those E's. That's what's going on with the 3rd level, and we need that 3rd level here, because we can't just stop at just saying that when you hear this food or when you smell this food, that's the end of the story. Well, it's not. We need a special kind of word to fill this up, to explain how each of those senses is coming into play, right? To do that, we're going to use adjectives. This is a paper full of adjectives. Adjectives are incredibly important in writing. Remember that there are parts of speech, right? Nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, articles, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections. When you take a sentence and you take all the elements of that sentence, which is each individual word, every one of those words is a part of speech. It's a type of word, right? And understanding how to use those parts of speech is really important in your writing. You should be thinking of the parts of speech and the words that you're choosing to tell your story or to make your argument, because how you do that can affect how somebody reads it. So, for example, as one small example, we're going to focus on adjectives, like I said, because adjectives describe nouns. This is a noun, right? This food that I'm going to be talking about is a thing, and I want to use words that describe that thing, and that's where adjectives come into play. Now, I know you already know what adjectives are. There's no new information here, right? An adjective is a thing that is a word that describes a thing. But how much thought do you actually put into the adjectives that you're using? For example, if somebody asked me, Dan, what's pizza like? And I said, well, pizza's good. Did I really tell them anything about what it's like to experience a pizza? All I've really said is I like pizza. Pizza's good to me. I like it. That's really all I've said. But I haven't shared with them the experience of it. I need adjectives, good, strong adjectives, to really make them understand. Pizza's gooey and warm and saucy and oozy and cheesy and meaty and all kinds of things, right? The words that I can think of that describe the experience of that thing, that pizza, that's where adjectives come into play, okay? It's really important, a really powerful tool in your writing toolbox, basically, that you can use when you want somebody to experience something. Whenever you're reading a really good novel, like let's say a really good scary Stephen King book, right? It's scaring the hell out of you. I guarantee Stephen King put a heck of a lot of thought into the adjectives he's using when he's writing that. And by the way, he's focusing on a lot of different types of senses, right? He wants you to really understand what it's like to feel. He doesn't just tell you what the monster looks like. He tells you what it sounds like, and he tells you the smell that it's emanating. All these things help you to understand how terrifying this monster is. You're going to do the same with this food by explaining how incredibly tasty and how good this thing smells and how delicious the feel of it is in your mouth when you're chewing on this thing, right? That's where all these senses come into play, basically. So that third level is going to be adjectives. And those are those capillaries, right? When we were talking about the circulatory system, the smallest of the blood vessels come into play right here. Notice I'm putting 4 on each of the arteries. That's what I want you to aim for. That's the minimum requirement for this paper, okay? What I'm going to do is fill this thing up with bubbles. And you probably can figure out that going in the bubbles will be adjectives. You just talked about how powerful they are and how strong they are and how important they are to describing something, because that's what they do, right? They describe things. So I'm going to start filling up these bubbles with adjectives that correspond to the sense that they're connected to, okay? So if my favorite food is sashimi, I'm going to talk about right here just how it smells. I'm focusing just on that one sense, okay? So there you go. I've got 4 adjectives talking about just the smell of sashimi. Really important that you give me a minimum of 4 for each of those senses. That means you're going to have together 20 adjectives, which is going to give us a nice pool of words to draw from when you're trying to describe this food in paragraph form, okay? So that's it. That's the point of this map. Fill it up with adjectives. Now, this is the assignment for now, okay? This is where we're stopping. I just want you to map out an outline, and this is an outline. This is an outline for the paragraph you're going to be writing. Things to keep in mind. I do want to see color, and I want to see 3 of them. That's really important. In fact, I want you to use the same 3 colors that you used on the what kind of writer I am paragraph and the apple plant job, right? I had you color all those things. I want you to color this guy with the same 3 colors. Notice the outward progression of the colors. Some of you are going to be very tempted to make this red, yellow, blue, green, violet, because there's 5 and you're thinking of 5 categories because there are 5 senses, but that's not the case. Keep in mind, this is the second level of information, supporting details. Supporting details are all the same because they're doing the same job, right? Mine are all blue because they are all supporting details. I'm not going for that rainbow effect, which looks really nice, but it's confusing because it doesn't explain the levels of information. So your 5 senses need to be all the same color. Whatever your supporting details were on the last paper, on the last paragraph, that's what color it's going to be this time. And then finally, I've got my adjectives. All my adjectives have the same job. They're all describing a thing, so they're all green. Mine are all green, right? Really, really important that you get that color scheme, because I'm going to be grading you on that. You're going to be getting points for showing me that you understand those levels of information. Another helpful hint. Some people have trouble coming up with the adjectives. So a couple of things you can do to help yourself out. One is just to go on Google and look at a picture of your food. I would Google sashimi and look at a bunch of pictures of sashimi. For some reason, looking at all those pictures makes me feel like it's in front of me, and it helps me to really start describing this thing. It helps me to remember what this thing smells like and what it sounds like and all those senses, basically. Looking at a picture can help. So if you get stuck, just Google it and look at a picture of it. Another thing you can do, this is kind of random, but it can be helpful. Go on Google again and just type in adjectives. List of adjectives, and you'll just get hundreds and hundreds of adjectives. Look at it, because some of those words are going to pop out at you, right? The point is, you want it to be a strong adjective. That's important. Don't use a word like good. Good doesn't tell us anything about what it's like to experience this food. But if it's effervescent, or if it's brightly colored, right? If it's translucent, if it's shiny, these are things people can really visualize and draw upon their senses to try to experience or understand the experience of what this food is like, right? So choose your adjectives carefully. Be as creative as you want to, but make sure they're really descriptive adjectives, not simple basic adjectives, okay? So that's it. That's the assignment for now. I'm going to give you another piece after you complete the map. So for today, try to focus just on this guy, okay? Just get this map done. Remember, it's a mind map, so there are a few rules. You want to obey those rules. Use color, use few words. I didn't use any pictures except for my heart, basically. But if you want to do that as well, feel free. Put as many pictures as you want to help you to organize your thoughts because this thing is going to become our first writing project, okay? So that's it for now, guys.